Hey, how's it going? This is Melinda and welcome to my channel. Today, I want to talk to you about 10 records that changed my life. If I can come up with a better title, I will, but I watched Pete Pardo from the channel Sea of Tranquility, and he made a video a lot like what I want to make, and it was called, he did 20 records that changed my life, but I'm going to do 10 for the sake of time. I loved it, and if I can come up with a better title, I will, but these are records that truly had a huge impact. If they didn't change my life, they just have a huge reaction. If I see them or I play them, I instantly have a connection to them that I feel like in some ways changed who I am, are a part of my being. So let's go ahead and get started with the first one, a great record that literally inspired my daughter's name. This is Eat a Peach by the Allman Brothers. And my first knowing of Gregg Allman, honestly, was probably not a good one because he was marrying Cher, and I was so team Sonny at that time. Didn't want Sonny and Cher to end. But he wrote a brilliant, beautiful song called Melissa. And when I was pregnant and my husband and I, we didn't want to know the sex of the baby. We wanted it to be a surprise. So we chose boy and girl names. And when I was going through the list, the name Melissa stood out to me as one of the choices I wanted to make. For one, I thought the name was timeless. It's similar to my name. And this amazing song written by Gregg Allman, he sings Sweet Melissa, which I wanted a sweet little baby. So, that was one of the names that stood out to me, and I wrote it on the list. And then I gave the book to my husband, and he separately from me made his own list. When we compared lists, the only girl name that we both had on our list was Melissa. So that was easy. We chose Melissa as the name, and sure enough, we had a little girl. So the bittersweet part of this story is that 4 years ago when we were planning our daughter's wedding, the father-daughter dance was going to be to Melissa. And it didn't get to happen because, as you all know, the pandemic happened. Everything got canceled. We had to have a bare bones wedding because she didn't want to change the date. Just immediate family. No reception. No father-daughter dance. And I feel robbed in a way because that was one of the things I looked forward to, was seeing my husband and daughter dance to the song Melissa. So this one, obviously for very important reasons, has had a huge impact on my life. And this next record, when I see it, reminds me of just such great memories. And we can all remember the big vacations we had as kids, important things like that. But I think a lot of the things that matter are the small things, the little things in life, the mundane things in life. When I see this record, it has an instant recognition for me because when I was a little girl, I had an older sister and she was a cheerleader. She would go to ball games to cheer, and away games were sometimes as far as an hour away from home. Back then, there weren't cell phones. There was no way to let us know that she was getting close to being at the high school or middle school to pick her up. So we just kind of had to guess what time to show up. My mom would not let me be at home by myself, so I had to go on these trips with her to pick up my sister from away ball games. And we would sit in a high school parking lot or a middle school parking lot, depending on my age, and listen to music and talk. And this record by Jefferson Starship, and I know it's a little bit of a compilation, Gold. So many of these songs would play, and they were older even at the time, but my mom liked her AM radio station, and I remember hearing Count on Me and Miracles, and there's another song on here that was really important, With Your Love. I also love the song Jane by Jefferson Starship. Now, Jefferson Airplane, I love the music of the very early music from the 60s. But this, when I hear those songs, reminds me of sitting and just waiting for my sister to show up on the bus so we could pick her up and take her home. The great conversations I had with my mom. She was genuinely interested in what was going on with my life. If I had a crush on a boy or if I was getting along with my best friend, and just great conversations. And I really love those songs. And when I see this, I instantly remember all that wonderful time I had with my mom, the little things. It's in the little things. It's a great record. Love Marty Ballin's voice. Love Grace Slick. So it's a great record all the way around. Now, I've talked about Michael Jackson's Thriller on my channel before, and I did a review on Thriller. And if you want to know the impact it had on my life, watch at least the beginning, if not the complete video, where I did the mobile fidelity review of the album Thriller, because I share what impact this record had on my life. But before that one came along, Off the Wall was pretty important too. And I can remember the big songs from this album, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, and Rock With You, and She's Out of My Life. And I do have great memories of my mom's. She had this little bitty grill, and she would take it outside on pretty days, and we had this little picnic table. And I can remember Mom bringing out the radio, turning it on, and hearing Rock With You, She's Out of My Life, and great memories of that. And I tell you, when I put this on, I can almost smell the charcoal because the memories are so close and so dear. And also, when I was younger, I'd babysat a lot, and there was this little boy that I would babysit. He was a huge fan of Michael Jackson, and he had this video called The Making of Michael Jackson's Thriller. It was a video about how they made the video for Thriller, and a lot of the songs that are on this album were featured in little segments of that video. So this also, Off the Wall, the beginning of my Michael Jackson fandom, and I really love this album, and it just brings back wonderful memories. This next record, I'm not going to go into the extent of it, because if you have watched my channel for very long, you know the story. But this I have to talk about for just a minute. Sonny and Cher's All I Ever Need Is You. My very first childhood memory is leaving the album cover of this album out in the rain. And I could still, I was only 3 years old, but I can still remember going outside, and this was the side that was face up in the water outside, because I'd left it out and it rained. It was near my swing set that I had, this metal swing set. And I still remember looking at it and feeling really bad that I had left it out in the rain and that it had gotten ruined. But you know, again, it's about the music, so we salvaged the record. The record was still in the house. And great songs like All I Ever Need Is You, Here Comes That Rainy Day Feeling, I Love You More Today Than Yesterday. I loved Sonny and Cher. My mom and I loved watching that Sonny and Cher show that was out in the early 70s. And I even had an Amigo doll of Cher and loved it so much. But there was a song that after my dad left and after they got a divorce that Sonny sang, You Better Sit Down, Kids. And I know Cher sang it as well, but the Sonny version from this album is the one that I know. And Sonny was singing everything I should have heard from my dad at that time. I should have had that reassurance. I didn't get it. And I didn't see my dad a lot, and he did not help raise me. He was there for the big moments, but I was just talking about Jefferson Starship. It's those little moments. It's the curiosity. He didn't know anything going on in my life while I was growing up. That song, You Better Sit Down, Kids, was what I needed to hear, even though Sonny was singing it instead of my dad. But anyway, of course, this has great songs that I remember fondly listening to as a kid. And then the song, You Better Sit Down, Kids, that broke my heart. So yes, that song has a little bit of an impact on me. No, not a little bit, a lot. And as Paul Harvey would say, stay tuned, you will hear the rest of the story, because I do have something else I want to share that I have not shared before about my dad. But I want to move on to something a little lighter here, Dark Side of the Moon. And this is my most recent Dark Side of the Moon purchase. I have 3 copies of this record. I don't know that I need 3, but I want 3. And this is the quad version, and it sounds absolutely incredible. I don't know of a version of this record that doesn't sound great, but this is a hard to find record. I had to pick it up. And I want to give Dark Side of the Moon all of the credit for when I was listening to music, how great it sounded to me, the effects. It really, the sound quality of this record led me down the idea of having great sounding records and great sounding equipment, something that brings me closer to the music where I can hear more and more detail. It gave me a hunger for that. Not only is it a terrific album to listen to, but I just also love that it inspired me to improve my stereo equipment to the best of what I can, and to also occasionally get some records that sound great and I can listen to, and they feel like they're in the room, the presence of the music. So Dark Side of the Moon really did it for me, opened a lot of doors to my listening experience. So it doesn't hit me in the emotional way that some of the other records I've shared does, but it does send an emotional reaction to me, and it really inspired me to improve my stereo equipment and sound quality and what I buy when it comes to vinyl records. This record I'm going to share now is the rest of the story with my dad. I told you my dad was not a part of my life growing up. I do remember seeing him. He showed up for my graduation. He showed up for the big moments, not there for the little ones. He never saw me sick, never saw when I had a broken heart, never talked to me about boys, never had those conversations. But I will say that when my mom passed away, he came to the funeral and he sent flowers to the funeral for my sister and for me. And after the funeral was over, he came to me with tears in his eyes and he apologized. He said, I was 19 years old. I was just too young and dumb to realize what I had. And I'm sorry. And of course, that was a lot to take in at that moment, in a funeral. So I just kind of pushed it away a little to talk and explore and think about later. And I did. And he did. Once I became an adult, I was living in the same city as him. He would come visit me. I would say we saw each other once a month, probably. It's hard to open a door. You can't have that same kind of relationship with a parent who didn't help raise you. But I did have a good friendship and a good relationship with him. Well, one time he came over and he was talking to me about music. And he said, there's this one band that I really like. And they were brothers. They harmonized. I really liked them. And I'm like, oh, you mean the Beach Boys, right? No, that's not who I'm talking about. Something else. And he couldn't think of the name. And I realized he's talking about the Bee Gees. And I pulled this record out for him because he knew I was making vinyl videos and he knew I had a vinyl record collection. And I put this on for him. And I played side 2, How Deep Is Your Love, Love So Right, Too Much Heaven. And he was just taking it all in and he loved it. I could just see in his face, I could see how much he was enjoying the music and hearing those harmonies. And I think he was really loving vinyl too. I think he loved the way it sounded. And I'll never forget that. That was, he came over one more time after that day and he passed away suddenly that night. We weren't expecting it. So I'm so glad I got to see him on that last time, the day he died. But I truly treasure this record, and we finally had a little moment together of sitting there and listening to a song that I could see meant so much to him. I want to say a couple more things about my dad. He served proudly as a policeman for his entire career, and I'm proud of him for that. And after my mom died, and I would go take flowers to the cemetery, I always noticed that in this one spot, there were flowers put there. And I knew they weren't from my sister because I asked her. I knew they weren't from my mom's best friend because I asked her too. And once my dad passed away, those flowers have never been back. So I know in my heart, it was my dad. It was on a way, it was in an area where he would have went. So it made sense that he could easily stop by to my mom's cemetery where she was buried. He knew where she was. So I just wanted to share that about my dad. That's really the rest of the story. So now let's move on to another record that opened doors for me. It is Miles Davis, In a Silent Way. I never dreamed that I would love jazz music. It's not something that came to me naturally. But this album, In a Silent Way, was just enough fusion, a little bit of a 70s feel of music that I loved, along with his incredible trumpet playing that really opened the door for me. And now I absolutely love and probably prefer classic jazz. But before I could get there, I had this to open the door. It's still my favorite jazz album of all time, although there's others that could give it a good run for the money. But it changed my life in a way that I now can explore music that I never thought I would love. And I love In a Silent Way and jazz music. So I'm very, very grateful for that. This next record, I can't say I owned a single album from this band growing up, but their music defined my childhood. And if I think about Rumors by Fleetwood Mac, the song Dreams, or Hotel California, those songs take me to my first house I ever lived in. Just grew up in the summertime, and all of the wonderful memories of that time, I should say. But there is a band that song after song after song, when I hear it just brings back being in that first house that we lived in a little small town. My dad and mom had already divorced. And it just really brings back wonderful memories of living in a small town, having a lot of friends. It was a time, when you're young and time goes so slowly. And I really miss that because time flies by the older you get. But let's talk about the music of Electrical Light Orchestra, ELO. Their hits in the 70s played on the radio all the time. Now, my mom didn't own any of the ELO records, so this compilation represents something very special to me with songs like Mr. Blue Sky, Evil Woman, Don't Bring Me Down, Sweet Talking Woman, Shine a Little Love. I love that song so much. The one that really I remember more than any is Telephone Line, and that eerie, I love the beginning. It's kind of eerie sounding with that telephone. I think I remember hearing someone say that he searched for that right dial tone and signal, and it was from New York, and he chose that to be the intro to that song. When I hear that song, I think of Charlie's Angels, Wonderful Summer with the windows rolled up, running around the neighborhood with my friends. There were a lot of elderly couples that loved kids, and they would sit outside on their swings and just go over and say hi to them. Just such great music from ELO that brings so many wonderful memories to me. This is an incredible record by Van Halen, 1984. And Diver Down was my introduction to Van Halen and Eddie Van Halen in particular on guitar. Of course, I went back and now I have a lot of favorites from the older records that came before that. 1984, the album, if there is a Lucky Charm or Rabbit's Foot or whatever you would think when it comes to records, this is it. This is the most sentimental record in my collection when I want to think about the good times, the absolute amazing times. Everything was going great when this record was a hit. Jump. I remember just loving that song when it came out, and I remember watching Friday night videos. I loved that video so much where Eddie's playing the keyboard and he's smiling. Panama, one of my favorite songs of all time, if not my favorite. It reminds me of the summer right before I went into my freshman year. So exciting. And I can remember cruising around town with my best friend and her boyfriend, and there were some back roads that were a lot of fun to drive that people would just drive around on because they had such great hills. And I can remember my tummy, like it tickled your tummy if you were on certain hills. And I remember listening to Top Jimmy, Drop Dead Legs, and I could almost feel my tickle in my stomach when I listened to those songs. This is the sentimental record. It is the one that I remember very fondly when things were going great in my life. You know, we all have our hills and valleys. This is definitely a hill that tickled my stomach. So I love 1984 by Van Halen. And the final record I'm going to show, you're going to think, oh, what a joke. And I've seen just a little bit of my analytics, and I know by now I've lost half my audience anyway, so I'm going to show it. Music Machine. It is a K-Tel record, but you guys, I can honestly say this is the most nostalgic record I've ever owned. I had it as a kid. It introduced me to so many bands. I can still remember Feels Like the First Time by Foreigner, listening to that in my living room as a kid. And Wild Cherry, Play That Funky Music, Kiss is Beth. That's how I got introduced to Kiss. Car Wash by Rolls Royce. You and Me by Alice Cooper. I loved that song when I was a kid. Got to Give It Up by Marvin Gaye. It's just absolutely a wonderful album that I will never forget. And I still have the poster from Casey and the Sunshine Band. This is one of the posters that was up on my wall at that time when I was a little girl. And wow, I just never forget. This really truly molded me, introduced me to several artists, and I spent so much time with this album, probably the most time I've ever spent with an album, other than 1984 maybe. That one would give it a run for its money. But Music Machine, yes, it's a K-Tel record. It's low quality. It's not have a lot of depth to it. But again, it's all about the small things, and I spent so much time with that record. So those are 10 records that, in my heart, in my opinion, changed my life. Let me know some of the records that are so important to you, that you enjoy. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, hit the like button and the notification bell, and thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.